She walked away from the billionaire CEO's life, not knowing she was pregnant. 8 years later, he gets a call that she's had an accident. The phone rang at 3:17 a.m., piercing the silence of James Anderson's Singapore penthouse. He fumbled for it, irritation quickly giving way to confusion as an unfamiliar voice spoke. "Mr. Anderson? This is Westlake Memorial Hospital. You're listed as the emergency contact for Lena Turner. She's been in a severe car accident." James felt the world tilt beneath him. "Lena? Is she?" "She's in critical condition, sir. She's unconscious and may require surgery. We need someone to make medical decisions." "I'll be there," he said, already calculating the fastest route from Singapore to Westlake. "I'm on the other side of the world, but I'll be there." "Sir, there's something else you should know. Her son is here. He says his name is Dylan. He's asking for his mother." James froze, his heart suddenly hammering against his ribs. "Her son?" "Yes, sir. He's 8 years old." 8 years. The exact time since Lena had walked out of his life. The exact time since he'd let her go. "Hello, I'm Mr. Harrison, and today I'm sharing a story that will make you question everything you thought you knew about love, timing, and second chances. Have you ever wondered what might have happened if you'd made a different choice at a crucial moment in your life? Or if someone you loved had chosen differently? Today's story explores exactly that, how one decision can alter the course of not just one life, but 3. If you've ever had to choose between love and ambition, or if you've ever kept a secret to protect someone else, this story will resonate deep in your soul. Give this video a like if you believe that sometimes the universe finds ways to reconnect people who are meant to be together, no matter how much time has passed. As James Anderson's private jet cut through the night sky, racing from Singapore to Westlake, his mind was a storm of memories and questions. 8 years had passed since he'd last seen Lena Turner. 8 years since she'd walked away from him on her birthday, leaving him with words that had haunted him ever since. "I love you too. But sometimes love isn't enough." And now a son? A child he never knew existed? The possibility sent waves of shock and disbelief crashing through him. Could it be true? Could Lena have kept something so monumental from him all these years? The Lena he knew valued honesty above all else. The Lena he knew would never keep a father from his child. But then again, the James she knew had repeatedly chosen his company over their relationship. The James she knew had missed her birthday dinner, arriving 2 hours late with rehearsed apologies and distracted eyes. As the plane began its descent, James closed his eyes, remembering the day that had changed everything. The day Lena Turner had walked into his life. It had been raining that Tuesday afternoon when James stepped into Westlake Public Library. He'd come seeking information on the old Harrington building, a historic structure he was considering for Meridian's new Community Innovation Center. What he found instead was a woman whose quiet confidence and warm intelligence captivated him instantly. Lena Turner stood behind the reference desk, her chestnut hair pulled back in a simple knot, glasses perched on her nose as she organized a stack of returns. When she looked up and smiled, something shifted in James's carefully ordered world. "I'm looking for information on local historical architecture," he said, his voice carrying the subtle authority of someone used to being listened to. "I'm considering restoring the old Harrington building downtown." Her eyes lit up with interest, not at him or his obvious wealth, but at the mention of the building. "That's quite an undertaking. We have an extensive collection on local architectural history. Follow me." She led him through the library's hushed interior to a section filled with local history. As she pulled volumes from shelves with practiced ease, James found himself more interested in watching her than in the books she was gathering. "The Harrington has been abandoned for nearly 30 years, she explained, opening a large book of photographs to show him the building in its prime. It was originally built in 1892 as a mercantile exchange. The architecture is neo-Romanesque with some unusual Art Nouveau elements added during a 1920s renovation." "You know your local history," James observed, genuinely impressed. Lena smiled, a hint of pride in her expression. "I wrote my master's thesis on architectural preservation in small American cities. The Harrington was actually one of my case studies." What had begun as a simple research visit extended into hours of conversation. James found himself sharing his vision for the building not just as Meridian's new offices, but as a community space that would help revitalize Westlake's struggling downtown. "The library closes in 5 minutes," Lena finally said, surprised to find the building nearly empty, the afternoon light fading to dusk outside the tall windows. James looked at his watch with genuine surprise. "I've monopolized your entire afternoon. Let me make it up to you with dinner." Something in his eyes, a vulnerability beneath the confidence, made Lena say yes against her better judgment. That dinner at Westlake's modest but charming Italian restaurant revealed a connection neither had expected. James, accustomed to people being interested in his wealth and power, found himself enchanted by Lena's genuine interest in his ideas rather than his bank account. Lena, who had always approached relationships with careful deliberation, found herself drawn to the passion and vision beneath James's polished exterior. "Most people see me as the billionaire CEO first," James admitted over tiramisu. "They either want something from me or they're intimidated. You just talk to me like I'm a normal person." Lena tilted her head, studying him. "Aren't you?" Her simple question made him laugh, a genuine sound that softened the lines of his face. "I suppose I am. It's just been a while since anyone reminded me of that." One dinner became breakfast the next morning. One date became 10. Their worlds, so different on the surface, began to intertwine in ways that transformed them both. James started the restoration of the Harrington building, incorporating many of Lena's suggestions about preserving its historical character while creating modern, sustainable spaces. Lena found herself drawn into James's world of innovation and possibility, her practical nature complementing his visionary thinking. "You're different from anyone I've ever met," he told her one night as they stood on the balcony of his penthouse. The city lights spread below them like fallen stars. "Most people want something from me, my money, my connections, my influence. You just want me." Lena leaned into his embrace, breathing in the scent that had become so familiar in just 3 short months. "Is that so unusual?" "You have no idea," he murmured against her hair. For 6 months, they existed in a bubble of perfect understanding. James introduced Lena to his world of corporate power and wealth, while she showed him the quiet joys of community connection and service. They balanced each other, her steadiness tempering his intensity, his ambition inspiring her to dream bigger. But as winter melted into spring, subtle changes appeared in their relationship like hairline cracks in fine porcelain. James's phone calls began coming at odd hours, their planned weekends increasingly interrupted by urgent business matters. The restoration project stalled as Meridian faced challenges with a major international contract. "It's just temporary," James assured her during one of their increasingly rare quiet moments together. "Once we secure this deal in Singapore, everything will settle down." "You said that about the Tokyo expansion last month," Lena pointed out gently. "And the Dubai negotiations before that." James sighed, running a hand through his hair. "This is different. This Singapore deal could revolutionize renewable energy implementation across Southeast Asia. Millions of people could have access to clean power. I can't just walk away from that." "I'm not asking you to walk away from your work, James. I'm asking you to make room for us alongside it." He pulled her close, pressing a kiss to her forehead. "I promise after Singapore, things will be different. We'll take that trip to the coast you've been wanting. Just us. No phones, no interruptions." Lena believed him because she wanted to, because the alternative meant acknowledging that perhaps their worlds were too different after all. The breaking point came on her birthday. Lena sat alone at Castellano's, the upscale restaurant where James had made reservations weeks earlier, watching her wine warm as minutes stretched into an hour, then 2. When he finally arrived, his distraction was palpable, his apology rehearsed. "The Singapore deal is falling apart," he explained, not quite meeting her eyes. "I had to take the call. You understand, right?" And she did understand. That was the problem. She understood perfectly that in James's world, business would always come first, that she would always be waiting at empty tables, making excuses to friends, rearranging her life to accommodate the unpredictable demands of his. "I can't do this anymore," she said quietly, her voice steady despite the trembling in her hands. "I need someone who can be present, James. Someone who makes our relationship a priority, not just when it's convenient." "That's not fair," he protested, genuine hurt flashing in his eyes. "You know how important this deal is. Thousands of jobs depend on it." "And that's exactly why we can't work," Lena replied, gathering her purse. "Your priorities are noble, James. They're just different from mine." He reached for her hand across the table. "Don't do this. I love you, Lena. We can figure it out." For a moment, she wavered. The pain in his eyes mirrored her own, and she knew with bone-deep certainty that he did love her, in his way. But love wasn't enough without commitment, without the daily choice to prioritize their relationship. "I love you too," she admitted. "But sometimes love isn't enough. If you've ever had to choose between your heart and your head, hit that like button. And if you believe that true love sometimes requires the courage to walk away, subscribe to Timeless Love Tales with Mr. Harrison. The most heartbreaking part of Lena and James's story is still to come, and you won't want to miss what happens when fate brings them back together in the most unexpected way. She walked away that night, tears blurring the city lights as she drove home alone. James called repeatedly in the days that followed, left voicemails that grew increasingly desperate, sent flowers that wilted untouched on her porch. But Lena held firm, knowing that temporary passion couldn't sustain a lifetime of being second place. "He'll move on," she told her best friend, Maya, over coffee a week after the breakup. "Men like James Anderson don't stay single for long." Maya studied her with concern. "And what about you? Will you move on?" Lena stared into her cup, the answer lodged somewhere between her heart and throat. "I have to." What she didn't know, couldn't know, was that their final night together had created something permanent, a connection that would bind them irrevocably despite her determination to move forward. The pregnancy test showed positive 6 weeks later. Lena sat on the edge of her bathtub, staring at the 2 pink lines with a mixture of terror and wonder. A child. James's child. Their child. Her first instinct was to call him immediately. James deserved to know, had a right to be part of this unexpected development. But as her hand reached for the phone, she hesitated. That morning's newspaper lay open on her kitchen counter, the business section featuring a photo of James shaking hands with Singapore's Minister of Energy. The headline announced Meridian's groundbreaking deal to revolutionize renewable energy infrastructure across Southeast Asia. The article mentioned that James Anderson would be relocating to Singapore to personally oversee the 5-year implementation. 5 years on the other side of the world. The Harrington building restoration had been abandoned. She knew. The local newspaper had run a story about the community's disappointment, the lost opportunity for downtown revitalization. James had chosen his path, just as she had chosen hers. Calling him now would force him to divide his attention again, to make impossible choices between his corporate responsibilities and a family he hadn't planned for. Or worse, it might bring him back out of obligation rather than desire, trapping them both in a relationship that had already proven unsustainable. "I can do this alone," she whispered to the empty bathroom, one hand resting protectively over her still flat stomach. "We'll be okay." That night, she sat down and wrote James a letter she would never send. "Dear James, today I discovered I'm carrying your child. Our child. Part of me wants to call you, to share this miraculous and terrifying news. But I've seen the headlines. I know about Singapore. I know this is your moment, the culmination of everything you've worked for. I'm making the choice I believe is best for all of us. I'm choosing to let you fulfill your destiny without the complication of an unexpected family. I'm choosing to raise this child in a home where they will always be the priority, never an interruption. Maybe someday you'll know. Maybe someday the timing will be right. Until then, know that I don't regret a moment of our time together, and that a part of you will live on in the child I'll raise with all the love in my heart. Always, Lena." She folded the letter carefully and placed it in her journal, a confession to herself rather than to him. The months passed in a blur of morning sickness, prenatal appointments, and quiet preparation. Lena told her family and close friends that the baby's father wasn't in the picture, deflecting questions with gentle but firm boundaries. She converted her home office into a nursery, painted soft green with a mural of ancient trees that seemed to whisper secrets when the afternoon light filtered through the curtains. "You don't have to do this alone," Maya insisted, helping Lena assemble a crib one Saturday afternoon. "There are resources, support groups for single mothers." "I'm not alone," Lena replied, resting a hand on her growing belly. "I have you, my parents, this community. And soon, I'll have this little one." Dylan James Turner arrived on a stormy October night, tiny and perfect with a shock of dark hair and eyes that already held a hint of his father's intensity. As Lena held him for the first time, exhausted but exhilarated, she felt no regret for her decision. This child was a gift, not a burden or a complication. She would give him everything she had, including the freedom to grow without the tension of divided loyalties. "Hello, Dylan," she whispered, tracing a finger along his perfect cheek. "It's just you and me against the world, and we're going to be amazing." Years passed in the beautiful chaos of single motherhood. Dylan grew into a thoughtful, curious boy with his mother's compassion and his father's drive. Lena advanced to director of the library system, finding fulfillment in her work and joy in watching her son discover the world. They built a life rich in love if modest in means, their small circle of friends and family providing the support Lena needed to balance career and motherhood. "Mom, where's my dad?" Dylan asked one evening when he was 6, the question Lena had been both expecting and dreading. She sat beside him on his bed, choosing her words carefully. "Your father is a good man who lives very far away. He doesn't know about you, not because he wouldn't want you, but because sometimes grown-ups make complicated choices." "Will I ever meet him?" Lena smoothed his hair so like James's in texture and color. "I don't know, sweetheart. Maybe someday." "Is he a superhero?" "Tommy says his dad is like a superhero because he's a firefighter." Lena smiled, thinking of James and his vision for changing the world through sustainable energy. "In his own way, yes. He helps make the world better for people who need it." This seemed to satisfy Dylan, at least for the moment. But as he grew older, the questions became more specific, more difficult to answer without revealing the full truth. Sometimes, in quiet moments, she would catch glimpses of James in Dylan's profile, in the determined set of his jaw when facing a challenge, in his instinctive understanding of mechanical things. During those moments, doubt would creep in, questioning whether she had made the right choice in keeping father and son apart. Once, when Dylan was 7, she almost broke her silence. A magazine article featured James accepting an international award for Meridian's groundbreaking work in renewable energy. The photograph showed him looking directly at the camera, older now, with subtle lines around his eyes and touches of silver at his temples, but still unmistakably the man she had loved. She nearly called Meridian's headquarters that day, nearly wrote an email explaining everything. But then Dylan burst through the door, excited about a science project he'd created, and the moment passed. Their life was good, stable, filled with love. Why disrupt it now? 8 years passed this way, building a life one day at a time, until the evening when everything changed. Lena was driving home from a late-budget meeting, mentally reviewing the grocery list for tomorrow's shopping, when headlights appeared suddenly in her lane. She swerved instinctively, but the oncoming car was too close, too fast. The impact came with a deafening crash of metal and breaking glass, the world spinning in a kaleidoscope of pain and confusion before darkness claimed her. She didn't feel the hands that pulled her from the wreckage, didn't hear the sirens wailing through the night, didn't know that as paramedics fought to stabilize her, they found her emergency contact information. She couldn't know that across the world, a phone was ringing in a Singapore penthouse, or that James Anderson was about to receive the call that would shatter the carefully constructed walls between past and present. James's private jet touched down at Westlake Regional Airport just after dawn. He had barely slept during the 14-hour flight, his mind racing with questions and possibilities. A car was waiting to take him directly to the hospital, the driver silent as James stared out at the familiar streets of the city he'd left behind. Westlake had changed in 8 years, new buildings rising alongside the old. But as they passed the abandoned shell of the Harrington building, James felt a pang of regret for promises unfulfilled. The community center that should have stood there, revitalizing the downtown, remained an unrealized dream, another casualty of his single-minded focus on Meridian's global expansion. At the hospital, James moved with purpose through the sterile corridors, following a nurse's directions to the intensive care unit. Outside Lena's room, he paused, suddenly uncertain. What right did he have to be here? What would he say when she opened her eyes? If she opened her eyes? The doctor's words had been cautiously optimistic but laced with concern. Severe concussion, internal bleeding, multiple fractures. We've stabilized her, but she remains unconscious. The next 24 hours will be critical. Taking a deep breath, James pushed open the door and stepped inside. The sight of Lena, pale and still against the white hospital sheets, machines beeping steadily around her, hit him with physical force. Her chestnut hair was spread across the pillow, her face bruised but still achingly familiar. 8 years had added subtle lines around her eyes and mouth, but she was still unmistakably his Lena. Except she wasn't his, hadn't been for a long time. "Oh, Lena," he whispered, moving to her bedside. "What have I done?" A small sound from the corner of the room made him turn. There, curled in an uncomfortable hospital chair, was a boy with dark hair, sleeping fitfully beneath a nurse's blanket. Dylan. It had to be. Lena's son. His son. The possibility that had seemed abstract on the plane now took solid form before him. The boy was around 8 years old, with a shock of dark hair that reminded James painfully of his own childhood photographs. Even in sleep, there was something in the set of his jaw, the shape of his face, that struck a chord of recognition deep within James. As if sensing James's scrutiny, the boy stirred, blinking awake with eyes that were hauntingly familiar, the same amber shade that looked back at James from every mirror. The boy sat up, rubbing sleep from his eyes as he regarded the stranger by his mother's bed with cautious curiosity. "Are you the doctor?" he asked, his voice small but steady in the quiet room. James shook his head, his throat suddenly tight. "No, I'm an old friend of your mom's. My name is James Anderson." The boy's eyes widened slightly. "Mom has a picture of you, in her special box." This revelation sent a jolt through James. Lena had kept his picture? After all this time? "You're Dylan, right?" James managed, struggling to keep his voice even. The boy nodded, sliding off the chair to stand beside his mother's bed, opposite James. "Are they going to fix her?" The simple question, asked with such trust that adults could indeed fix anything, broke something open inside James. "The doctors are doing everything they can," he said gently. "Your mom is very strong. She's a fighter." Dylan nodded solemnly, reaching out to touch Lena's hand. "I told her to be careful driving in the rain. She always tells me to be careful, but sometimes she forgets to be careful too." If you've ever wondered if one decision could change the entire course of your life, hit that like button now. And if you believe that some connections are so powerful that even time and distance can't break them, subscribe to Timeless Love Tales with Mr. Harrison. The most emotional part of this reunion is still to come, as James faces the truth about the son he never knew he had. James studied the boy's face, searching for the right words. How did you explain to a child that the world could be cruel and random, that sometimes being careful wasn't enough? "Sometimes accidents happen even when we're being careful," he said finally. "It's not your mom's fault, and it's not yours either." Dylan considered this, his expression serious beyond his years. "Are you going to stay until she wakes up?" "Yes," James answered without hesitation. "I'm not going anywhere." A nurse entered then, checking Lena's vitals and adjusting her for. She smiled kindly at Dylan. "Your grandmother just arrived. She's at the front desk asking for you." "That's my mom's mom," Dylan explained to James. "She lives 2 hours away." James nodded, feeling a strange mix of relief and disappointment. Relief that Dylan would have family to care for him during this crisis. Disappointment that his time with the boy would be interrupted. "You should go meet her," he suggested gently. I'll stay with your mom. Dylan hesitated, looking between James and his unconscious mother. Promise you won't leave her alone? I promise. After Dylan left with the nurse, James sank into the chair beside Lena's bed, taking her hand carefully in his. Her fingers were cold, but he could feel her pulse, steady and resilient like the woman herself. I should have been here, he whispered. All these years, I should have been here. The door opened again, and James looked up, expecting Dylan and his grandmother. Instead, a woman in her 60s with Lena's eyes and a stern expression entered, her gaze immediately fixing on James with unmistakable recognition. James Anderson, she said, her voice neither warm nor cold. I wondered if you'd come. James stood, suddenly feeling like a trespasser. Mrs. Turner, it's been a long time. 8 years, she agreed, moving to the opposite side of Lena's bed. 8 years since my daughter came home in tears because you couldn't make her a priority. The accusation stung not because it was unfair, but because it was entirely justified. I made mistakes, he acknowledged. Many of them. Yes, you did. She adjusted Lena's blanket with maternal tenderness. And now you're back, just in time to see the consequences. Dylan, James said, the name feeling both foreign and familiar on his tongue. He's mine, isn't he? Margaret Turner's eyes met his, measuring, judging. What makes you think that? He has my eyes, my jawline, and he's 8 years old. James swallowed hard. Why didn't she tell me? That's a question only Lena can answer. Margaret's expression softened slightly. But I'll tell you what I told her when she decided to keep her pregnancy a secret from you. Sometimes the kindest thing we can do for someone is to let them follow their chosen path without forcing them to divide their attention. James felt the words like a physical blow. She thought she was being kind? By keeping my son from me? She thought she was being realistic, Margaret corrected. You had made your priorities clear. Meridian, Singapore, changing the world. She didn't want to be an obligation, and she didn't want her child to be one either. Before James could respond, the door opened again and Dylan entered, his expression brightening at the sight of his grandmother. Grandma, did you see Mom? The doctor says she's going to wake up soon. Margaret embraced her grandson, shooting James a warning look over the boy's head. I did see her, sweetheart. And yes, the doctor is very hopeful. Dylan turned to James, a new curiosity in his gaze. Grandma, this is Mom's friend, Mr. Anderson. We've met, Margaret said simply. Dylan, why don't you go to the cafeteria with Nurse Julie and get some breakfast? I need to talk to Mr. Anderson for a moment. Once Dylan had left again, Margaret fixed James with a penetrating stare. What are your intentions here, James? Are you just satisfying your curiosity? Or do you plan to be part of their lives now? The question caught him off guard. He hadn't thought beyond getting to the hospital, seeing Lena, confirming his suspicions about Dylan. What did come next? I don't know, he admitted honestly. I only found out about Dylan hours ago, but I know I can't just walk away again. Even if that's what Lena wants? Is it? James challenged. Or is that what you think she should want? Margaret sighed, suddenly looking every one of her years. What I want is for my daughter and grandson not to be hurt. They've built a good life, James. A happy one. They don't need you swooping in with your billions and your complicated world to disrupt that. They're my family, James said, the words feeling right even as he spoke them for the first time. I've missed 8 years. I don't want to miss any more. Before Margaret could respond, a soft sound from the bed drew their attention. Lena's eyelids were fluttering, her fingers twitching against the sheets. She's waking up, Margaret said, immediately pressing the call button for the nurse. James, perhaps you should step out. No, his voice was firm. I need to be here when she opens her eyes. The next few minutes were a flurry of activity as medical staff checked Lena's vitals and responsiveness. James stood back, watching as she slowly returned to consciousness, her confusion giving way to recognition as she saw her mother. Mom! Her voice was raspy from the breathing tube that had been removed earlier. What happened? You were in an accident, darling? Margaret explained gently. But you're going to be fine. Dylan is here, he's just getting some breakfast. Lena nodded slightly, wincing at the movement. The other driver? Minor injuries, the doctor assured her. You took the worst of it, I'm afraid. As the medical team completed their assessment, Lena's gaze drifted past them, finally landing on James. Her eyes widened, a complex mix of emotions crossing her face. Surprise, confusion, and something deeper that James couldn't quite identify. James, the word was barely a whisper. I'll give you two a moment, the doctor said, ushering the nurses and Margaret out despite her protests. When the door closed behind them, James approached the bed slowly, as if afraid she might disappear if he moved too quickly. You're really here, Lena said, her voice stronger now. How? The hospital called me. I'm still your emergency contact, apparently. He attempted a smile that didn't quite reach his eyes. I was on a plane within the hour. From Singapore? Yes. Lena closed her eyes briefly, processing this information. You didn't have to come all this way. I'm going to be fine. I had to come, James insisted, moving closer. And not just because you were hurt. He paused, gathering his courage. I met Dylan. The color drained from Lena's face, her heart monitor betraying her spike in anxiety with quickened beeps. James, He has my eyes, James continued softly. My mother's chin. He's 8 years old, Lena. 8 years. Tears welled in Lena's eyes, spilling over onto her pale cheeks. I was going to tell you, that day, when I found out I was pregnant, but then I saw the news about Singapore about the 5-year contract. You were finally achieving everything you'd worked for. So you decided for me? James said, no accusation in his tone, just a profound sadness. You decided I wouldn't want to know my own child. I decided not to force you to choose, Lena corrected, her voice breaking, because I knew what that choice would do to you either way. Stay and resent us for holding you back, or go and carry the guilt of abandoning your family. I couldn't bear to put that burden on you. James sank into the chair beside her bed, running a hand through his disheveled hair. All these years, I've wondered what happened to you. If you were happy, if you ever regretted walking away. I never imagined. I'm sorry, Lena whispered. Maybe it was wrong. Maybe you had a right to know regardless of the consequences. But I thought I was protecting all of us. Does he know about me? James asked, the question that had been burning in his mind since he'd first seen the boy. He knows his father is someone who does important work far away. Someone who makes the world better for people who need help. Lena's eyes met his, vulnerable and honest. I never lied to him about you, James. I just edited the truth. Before James could respond, the door opened and Dylan burst in, his face lighting up at the sight of his mother awake. Mom, you're okay. He rushed to her bedside, carefully hugging her, mindful of her injuries. I'm okay, sweetheart, Lena assured him, holding him close with her uninjured arm. Just a little banged up. Dylan pulled back, his expression serious. You scared me. Don't do that again. I'll try my very best, Lena promised, smoothing his hair with a tender gesture that made James's heart ache with all he had missed. Dylan turned to James then, studying him with new interest. You stayed, like you promised. I always keep my promises, James said, the words feeling like both truth and lie simultaneously. He hadn't promised Lena forever, but he had promised her priority, a promise he had failed to keep. Dylan looked between the adults, his perceptive gaze catching the tension in the air. Mom, do you and Mr. Anderson know each other? Lena's eyes met James's over their son's head, a silent question passing between them. What do we tell him? How do we explain? James nodded slightly, giving her permission to lead this conversation however she felt best. Yes, Dylan, Lena said finally, her voice steady despite the emotion behind it. James and I knew each other a long time ago, before you were born. Dylan processed this, his expression thoughtful. Then, with the directness only a child could manage, He asked the question that changed everything. "Are you my dad?" The room fell silent, the beeping monitors suddenly deafening in the absence of voices. James felt his heart hammering against his ribs, his mouth dry as he waited for Lena's response. But Lena, always the strongest person he had ever known, simply nodded. "Yes, Dylan. James is your father." Dylan's eyes widened, turning to study James with new intensity. The one who helps people far away. The one who makes the world better. "That's what he tries to do," Lena confirmed softly. Dylan approached James slowly, examining him with the careful scrutiny of a scientist studying a new specimen. "You have eyes like mine." "Yes," James managed, his voice thick with emotion. "And you have my mother's chin. She would have loved to meet you. Why didn't you ever come see me before?" The question was asked without accusation, just genuine curiosity. James glanced at Lena, who gave him a small nod of encouragement. "I didn't know about you," he said honestly. "If I had, I would have been here in a heartbeat." "Oh," Dylan considered this. "So Mom never told you?" "No, she didn't. But that doesn't mean she was wrong," James added quickly, seeing Lena's distress. "Grown-ups sometimes make difficult decisions because they think they're doing what's best for everyone." Dylan nodded sagely, as if this made perfect sense to him. "Like when Mom wouldn't let me have a dog even though I really wanted one, because our apartment is too small and she works all day." Something like that, James agreed, grateful for the child's simple analogy. "But now you know," Dylan continued, his logic irrefutable. "So will you stay? If you've ever faced a moment where a simple question changed everything, hit that like button right now. And if you believe that sometimes the universe gives us second chances when we least expect them, subscribe to Timeless Love Tales with Mr. Harrison. The final part of this emotional journey is about to unfold, as James, Lena, and Dylan face the possibility of becoming the family they were always meant to be. The question hung in the air, innocent yet profound. Will you stay? 3 simple words that demanded an answer James wasn't prepared to give. How could he explain the complexities of adult relationships to an 8-year-old who saw the world in black and white? "Dylan," Lena began gently, "it's not that simple. I want to," James interrupted, surprising himself with the certainty in his voice. "I want to be part of your life, Dylan, if that's okay with you and your mom." Dylan's face brightened. "Really? You could teach me about the energy stuff you do. Mom says you're like a superhero but for the planet." James glanced at Lena, touched by the revelation that she had spoken of him so kindly to their son. "I'd like that very much. But right now, the most important thing is for your mom to get better. And for you to get some rest," Margaret added, returning to the room with a nurse. "Dylan, the doctor says we need to let Mom rest for a while. Why don't we go to the cafeteria and get some lunch?" Dylan hesitated, looking between his newfound father and his injured mother. "Will you both still be here when I come back?" "I promise," they answered in unison, their eyes meeting briefly over their son's head. After Dylan left with his grandmother, a heavy silence fell between them. Lena adjusted her position slightly, wincing at the movement. "You didn't have to say that," she said finally. "About wanting to stay. I meant it." James moved closer to her bed. "I've spent 8 years building Meridian into everything I dreamed it could be. Renewable energy systems in 12 countries. Thousands of communities with clean power for the first time. All the success I ever wanted." He paused, the truth of his next words settling in his chest. "And I've never felt more alone than the day I achieved it all." "James, let me finish, please." He took a deep breath. "When I got that call about your accident, before I even knew about Dylan, my first thought wasn't about the meetings I'd miss or the deals that would have to wait. It was that I might never get the chance to tell you that you were right to walk away that night. That I've spent 8 years regretting not running after you." Lena's eyes filled with tears. "I thought I was doing the right thing, not telling you about the pregnancy. I convinced myself it was kinder to let you go, to not force you to choose between your dreams and a family you never planned for. But it wasn't your choice to make," James said softly. "It was ours. Together. I know that now. Lena's voice was barely above a whisper. Seeing you with him today, I realize what I took from both of you. All the moments you missed. His first steps, his first words. The way he builds elaborate structures with anything he can find, just like you used to do with napkins and silverware at restaurants. James smiled at the memory, imagining a miniature version of himself creating towers from blocks and books. Tell me about him. Everything. For the next hour, as Lena's strength allowed, she shared stories of Dylan's life, his fascination with how things worked, his compassion for others, his stubborn determination when faced with the challenge. James listened, hungry for every detail, trying to piece together the years he had missed. He sounds amazing, James said when she finished, his heart full of pride for this child he barely knew. You've done an incredible job raising him, Lena. He makes it easy. Most days. She smiled, then grew serious again. What happens now, James? You have a life in Singapore, a company to run. You can't just walk away from that. Actually, I can. James leaned forward, taking her hand carefully in his. 6 months ago, I started transitioning day-to-day operations to my executive team. Meridian doesn't need me micromanaging anymore. It's stable, successful, doing exactly what I built it to do. What are you saying? I'm saying I was already planning to step back, to find something new, something that would fill the emptiness that success couldn't touch. His eyes held hers. And then the universe sent me back to Westlake, back to you. Back to a son I never knew I had. Lena studied him, searching for any hint of insincerity. And if I hadn't had this accident, if you hadn't found out about Dylan, you would have just continued your life on the other side of the world. Maybe. Probably. James acknowledged the truth of her words. But we can't change the past, Lena. We can only decide what to do with the present. Before she could respond, a knock at the door interrupted them. The doctor entered, clipboard in hand. Ms. Turner, your latest scans look promising. The swelling in your brain has decreased significantly, and your internal injuries are stable. If this progress continues, we can move you out of ICU tomorrow. That's wonderful news, James said, relief evident in his voice. It is, the doctor agreed. But complete recovery will take time. You'll need assistance at home for several weeks, possibly months. Lena's face fell slightly. I'll have to make arrangements. My mother can't stay indefinitely, and I don't want to disrupt Dylan's routine more than necessary. I'll help, James offered immediately. I can work remotely, arrange for additional care, whatever you need. The doctor smiled, looking between them. I'll leave you to discuss the details. The nurse will be in shortly with your medication. When they were alone again, Lena regarded James with a mixture of gratitude and wariness. You don't have to do this. We've managed on our own for 8 years. I know I don't have to. I want to. James hesitated, then added, unless you'd rather I didn't. If you want me to step back to give you space, I will. But please don't shut me out of Dylan's life again. The raw vulnerability in his voice touched something deep within Lena. This was a different James than the one she had left 8 years ago. Still driven and passionate, but somehow softer around the edges, more willing to acknowledge his own humanity. I don't want to shut you out, she admitted. But I'm afraid, James. Afraid of disrupting the life Dylan and I have built. Afraid of letting you in only to watch you leave again when the next big opportunity calls. I can't promise I'll never make mistakes, James said honestly. But I can promise that I've learned what matters most. It took losing you to understand that success means nothing without someone to share it with. Lena was silent for a long moment, weighing his words against the evidence of their shared history. We can't just pick up where we left off, she said finally. Too much has happened. We're different people now. I know. I'm not asking for that. James squeezed her hand gently. I'm asking for a chance to get to know you again, to be a father to Dylan, to see if we can build something new, something better than what we had before. Before Lena could respond, the door opened again, and Dylan bounded in, his energy seemingly undiminished by the day's emotional revelations. Mom, Dad, Grandma took me to the gift shop and I got you this. He proudly presented Lena with a small stuffed bear wearing a Get Well Soon t-shirt. "And I got this for you," he added, handing James a keychain with a miniature solar panel that lit up a tiny LED bulb. "Grandma said you like solar stuff." James accepted the gift, deeply touched by the thoughtful gesture. "I love it, Dylan. Thank you. Can I show Dad my science project pictures?" Dylan asked Lena, already pulling out his mother's phone. "The one that won first prize at school?" Lena nodded, her eyes meeting James's over their son's head. In that moment, something unspoken passed between them, not forgiveness exactly, not yet, but the possibility of it. The acknowledgement that whatever path they chose moving forward, it would be for Dylan's sake as much as their own. "It's a solar-powered water filtration system," Dylan explained excitedly, showing James photographs of his project. "Mom helped me with the research, but I built it myself." The teacher said it was innovative and showed exceptional understanding of environmental science. James listened, amazed by his son's intelligence and enthusiasm. "That's incredible, Dylan. Meridian has a whole division dedicated to clean water solutions. Maybe someday you could visit and see what they're working on." Dylan's eyes widened. "Really? Could Mom come too?" "If she wants to," James replied, careful not to presume. "I'd like that," Lena said softly, surprising them both. The next few weeks passed in a blur of hospital visits, rehabilitation sessions, and careful negotiations of this new family dynamic. James rented a house near Lena's apartment, close enough to be present daily but separate enough to give her the space she needed. He arranged for the best medical care, hired help for household tasks, and adjusted his work schedule to be present for Dylan's school events and activities. Slowly, cautiously, they began to rebuild trust. James attended parent-teacher conferences alongside Lena, learning about Dylan's academic strengths and challenges. Lena allowed herself to lean on James during particularly difficult physical therapy sessions, accepting his support without feeling diminished by it. And Dylan, with the remarkable adaptability of childhood, embraced having his father in his life as if it were the most natural thing in the world. "He fits," Dylan observed one evening as the three of them shared dinner at Lena's apartment, now modified for her recovery needs. "Dad fits with us, doesn't he, Mom?" Lena looked across the table at James, who was carefully avoiding her gaze, giving her space to answer however she chose. In that moment, seeing his consideration, his patience, his genuine love for their son, something shifted within her. "Yes," she said softly. "I think he does." Later that night, after Dylan had gone to bed, Lena found James on the balcony, staring out at the city lights much as they had done years ago on his penthouse terrace. "Thank you," she said, joining him at the railing, "for everything you've done these past weeks. You don't need to thank me. This is where I should have been all along." Lena shook her head. "Maybe not. Maybe we both needed to follow our separate paths to become the people we are now. The people who might actually have a chance at making this work." James turned to her, hope kindling in his eyes. "Are you saying what I think you're saying?" "I'm saying I'd like to try. Not for Dylan's sake, though that matters, but for us." Lena took a deep breath. "I never stopped loving you, James. I just stopped believing that love was enough. And now I think maybe it can be, if it's accompanied by growth, by understanding, by the willingness to make different choices than we made before." James reached for her hand, entwining their fingers carefully, mindful of her still healing injuries. "I love you, Lena Turner. I loved you 8 years ago when I was too blind to show it properly. I loved you all the years in between, even when I tried to convince myself I didn't. And I love you now, even more, for the strength you've shown raising our amazing son." Lena smiled, tears glistening in her eyes. "I love you too. Enough to try again. This time with open eyes and realistic expectations." "That's all I'm asking for," James said softly. "A chance to prove that sometimes love can be enough, when it's backed by commitment and the wisdom that comes from making mistakes." As they stood together under the stars, neither could know what challenges lay ahead. There would be difficult conversations, adjustments, moments of doubt. Building a family from pieces long separated would take patience and forgiveness on all sides. But in that moment, with the weight of secrets finally lifted and the possibility of a shared future before them, one truth was clear. Sometimes the road not taken finds its way back to you, offering a second chance you never expected to receive. 3 months later, as autumn painted Westlake in shades of gold and crimson, James stood before the Harrington building, blueprints in hand. The faded for sale sign had been replaced with a bright banner announcing future home of the Westlake Community Innovation Center, a Meridian Foundation project. "Are you sure about this?" Lena asked, standing beside him with Dylan between them. "Reviving this project after all these years?" James nodded, his arm around her waist. "More sure than I've ever been. This building is where our story began. It seems fitting that it should be part of our new beginning." Dylan looked up at the imposing structure. "Can I help design the children's learning lab? I have ideas for interactive displays about renewable energy." "Absolutely," James agreed. "This is going to be a family project, from start to finish." As they stood together, planning a future none of them could have imagined a year earlier, James reflected on the strange, winding path that had led them here. A missed birthday dinner, a painful separation, a secret kept with the best of intentions, a random accident that had changed everything. Life rarely followed a straight line from dream to fulfillment. Sometimes the most precious gifts came disguised as detours, delays, even disasters. Sometimes what seemed like an ending was merely a pause, a breath between chapters of a story still unfolding. "What are you thinking about?" Lena asked, noticing his contemplative expression. James smiled, pulling her and Dylan closer. "I'm thinking that sometimes the universe knows better than we do. That sometimes the longest road turns out to be the right one after all." If the story touched your heart, please hit that like button and subscribe to Timeless Love Tales with Mr. Harrison. I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments below. Have you ever experienced an unexpected reunion that changed your life? Do you believe that some people are meant to find their way back to each other, no matter how much time passes or what obstacles stand in their way? Remember that in life, as in love, timing is everything. Sometimes the greatest blessings arrive when we least expect them, wrapped in packages we never anticipated. Until next time, this is Mr. Harrison, reminding you that true love stories never have endings, only new chapters waiting to be written.